So, don't get any ideas now that I do the same thing. Anyway.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
As Pastor Gary just said, my name is Crystal Leroy. I'm from the West Coast of Newfoundland. I've been living here for the last 8 months. I've been studying at Memorial. I'm a student at Grenfell, but I came out here to do a few semesters, what have you. I'm working on my Bachelor of Arts currently. My plan after that is to obtain my Master's in Theological Studies. And eventually I hope to work in the field of prison ministry or addictions. There we go. It's a little bit louder. I didn't always have the ambition to work in ministry. In fact, I didn't even come from a Christian home. And just a little disclaimer, thank you, Katie, before I start. This is my first time telling my story in front of a group larger than 5 people. And as you can see, there's way more than 5 people here, so if I appear nervous, don't worry, it's just because I am, but I'll get through it, and I'm sure everyone else will bear with me as well. So yeah, just like jumping right into my story. Some of my earliest memories as a child involved waking up in a hospital ER room, hooked up to IVs and other sorts of medical equipment. When I was 22 months old, I was diagnosed with epilepsy, and for those of you who don't know, that's a seizure disorder. This resulted in me having to attend a school that was outside of my school zone, and it might seem like a little significant thing, big deal, she has to go to a school that's a half-hour away, but it actually had a profound impact in my life, and it ended up causing a lot of long-term anguish, I guess you could call it, as you'll see. But this resulted in me not being able to really make friends in my neighborhood because I didn't go to school with them and I was really shy. And vice versa as well. I couldn't really connect with my classmates because I lived a half-hour away, so I couldn't really, hang out with them whenever I desired to do so. And when I finally did meet people in my area, they were short-lived friendships because when the fall came around again, we would all part our separate ways. And this made it really hard for me to connect with others all through my life. I became super introverted and, school-oriented. And each new school year brought a new friendship circle to me. And that's really tough for an adolescent to go through. I'm sure some of you have kids that are at that age now, and that's the age where hormones are all out of whack, and you just need that one person to connect with, and, I didn't really have that. And so my shyness eventually in junior high turned into a more self-conscious attitude. And, I felt like an outcast, and I couldn't really connect with people, and I had no best friend per se, and I really didn't have a close connection with my family as well. I just became really unsatisfied with my life, jealous of others, and just really lonely, hopeless, and I felt rejected, and, I was hurting emotionally, and I remember, I could easily spot 20 different flaws standing 20 feet from a mirror. I was so self-conscious, I really hated myself, And so to make a long story short, let's skip along to grade 10, and this, where I lived, there was only a K to 12, or a K to 9 school, so I ended up going to high school with the people that I lived near. And I met this girl in my homeroom who lived near me, which was great. And I became a part of her friendship circle, and, we got along great and all that kind of stuff. However, once again, when the summer holidays rolled around, this time, we all had summer jobs. We were in grade 10, everybody moves on. So, obviously I didn't want to be alone again, so I started hanging out with a different group of people. And no disrespect towards them, but they just simply lived a different lifestyle than what I was raised here and what I was used to. These people, they drank a lot, and mind you, they're only like, in grade 10, you're what? How old was I, like 15 or something? They drank a lot for their age and stuff, and they also did drugs as well. So, while getting to know them, I occasionally started to drink a little bit and experiment with that kind of stuff. And shortly after hanging out with this new crew, my self-esteem issues started to return. Now, to be honest, they never really left, but when I hung out with the girl from my homeroom, I kind of had somebody to talk to about that, so it made it a little bit easier on me. And so I started to suffer with depression, and if anybody has dealt with that, it's definitely a dark place, and it's pretty scary, you just cry for no reason, and it's just a horrible place to be. And even though I was surrounded by more people, essentially this new group brought a larger quantity of people near me. I felt more alone. And I know it's a cliche, you can feel alone in a crowded room, but that is certainly true. And, I just felt stranded and trapped. So this is the summer of grade 11 now, leading up to grade 11. And I remember one day I got into this really huge fight with my parents. Now, it's no secret, I used to fight with my parents a lot anyway. But this time I kind of overdid it. I used to have a bit of a sauciness on me. Still kind of doing some of you guys, but I'm working on it. And they just like left the house. And I remember I went back and I lit up my first cigarette. And I actually had stolen it from my parents. I had a little supply. And so anyway, to move along, take a time or whatever, I kept going with that, and eventually I upgraded to smoking marijuana, which, that was a big adjustment for me, I guess you could say, because growing up I was never near it, anything, like my parents were clean cut at anything, right? Smoking, I suppose, but that's a story on its own. So yeah, I also started drinking more with my friends and stuff like that, and not only drinking more, but I would drink in larger quantities, and I would drink stronger liquors, which, that's not a very good combination for somebody, especially if you're not used to it. But it actually breaks my heart to say that it wasn't just a social thing for me. A lot of teenagers, they go through this phase where, oh, I'm just gonna drink because my friends are drinking or what have you, but I wouldn't really consider it a social thing for me because I basically did it to push my problems aside, and my heart goes out to those who do that because it's absolutely horrible, because your problem, like your issues never really go away. You just wake up the next morning with like a hangover or what have you, you're dragged out the next day, and it doesn't go away. But yeah, but it wasn't just a social thing. In fact, I would do these things. I would drink on my own. Like I would steal liquor from my fridge that my parents had on hand for like company or whatever at Christmas. And I would just like, with them in the next room, I would have like a couple drinks. And I didn't think that they knew, but I think that they might have knew. And if they don't, they're definitely going to see it now. But yeah, so, and also, like, I would occasionally smoke a draw before they would come home, just to, like, mellow myself out, because I knew that we would, like, strike an argument of some sort, so I just wanted to, like, have that covered already. But, I became a liar, too. Now, since I was, like, this high, since I could understand the concept of lying, my parents instilled in me, always tell the truth, and that's one thing that I'm, like, really big on now. Like, you get what you see, and, like, what I am is what you're gonna get. But I also became a big liar around this time because I had to hide my lifestyle from my parents. And apparently I didn't do it very well, as you'll see later on, because my parents kind of knew some stuff that I didn't know that they knew. But, yeah, as a result of all this, the depression didn't go away. In fact, it got worse, and, you know, I put on a fake smile to basically please everybody, and didn't really do me any good because I was still feeling like crap. But in grade 11, my grades started to slip big time. I fell into the cycle of smoking marijuana at lunchtime, and I would return to class if I felt like it. I do remember going back a couple times, and the teachers were just like, well, something to go with you, and, you know, whatever. But essentially I was in worse shape than what I was, and, well, what for? Basically, a pair of glazed over eyes, and living in constant anxiety, being caught by my parents, because I thought, oh, if they catch me, I'm going to get kicked out. If they catch me, I'm going to get killed. Like, you know, my parents, like, they don't stand for any of that kind of stuff. But, you know, I hated the lifestyle, I really did, but I just couldn't stop. I felt like, okay, maybe if I just wait an extra day, if I smoke a little more weed, if I do this, it'll get better, I'll get used to it, I'll adjust, it'll be wonderful, and everything will go away. Satan loves to put those thoughts in our head. But I felt like I couldn't stop. And I remember sitting in my room one night, and at the time, I wasn't a Christian, obviously. I wasn't raised near it or anything. The extent was, I think I said a prayer before I went to bed. It was just like words, didn't mean anything to me. But I was agnostic at this point, leaning more so towards atheism. You know, when you're in high school, they start to teach you about the evolution thing. I was like, okay, well, if God's real, then why all the pain in the world? And that's kind of what I went through around that time, because I was feeling pain myself. And I remember just like laying on my bed, and I was like bawling my eyes out, and I was just like, God, kill me now. Like, I literally like screamed it. Like, it was, you know, I'll never forget the moment, because little did I know that God actually heard my prayer, and He would kill off my lifestyle. He wouldn't kill me physically, but He would actually just take that lifestyle away. So I see irony in those words now. And it's just a moment that I'll never forget. So I come home from school one day. Can't remember. Mom was home for some reason, but anyway, she was on the computer, and I just walked in normally, casually, you know. And she looks at me and she says, "I have a question, Crystal." And I said, "What?" Like, you know, casual day. And then her words kind of like pierced me as she said, "Are you on drugs?" She just said it like that, no, like, beating around the bush, no nothing. She just came out and said it like that. I was like, oh my blessed, like, actually I didn't say blessed at that time, but I was like, what am I going to do? I can either lie to her or I can tell her the truth. So I made the stupid decision. I said, no. And then she said, "Crystal, I got a phone call today, don't lie to me. Are you on drugs?" And I said, I've tried them once or twice, you know. And to this day, to be honest, I haven't really explained to my mother that it was more than once or twice. But I'm sure she'll see this now, and we'll have a nice little chat about this after. But this was the start of change. Kind of getting caught, per se. Like, and it turns out she actually didn't get a phone call, FYI. It's like a parenting technique, I suppose. Oh, I got a phone call, so it's like, oh, I'm cornered. So it turns out she just knew. She seen changes in me, and everyone else did too. But yeah, so this was the start of change. First step, I stopped doing, like about a month later, I smoked my last joint. I remember we were behind the Pepsi Centre. I don't know if anyone's familiar with Cornerbrook. We were, like, that's where we used to go, behind the Pepsi Centre, skipping out of school, that sort of thing. And we were just, like, you know, passing it around, and all of a sudden, when it got to me, I was like, boys, I can't do this anymore. Like, that was, like, just, like, I just can't do it, you know? And so, you know, that was fine. I did that, and I haven't touched that since. And I don't intend to, no matter what life throws at me. But the second step was probably the most crucial. I regained contact with the girl from my homeroom, the one that, you know, she was clean cut as well, and she was a nice girl. And I became very close with her and her friendship circle. I was considered like one of their best friends as well. And, you know, they helped me stay away from that sort of thing. And I just kind of like left the other friends, and I took a bit of flack for that, I'm not going to lie. They were kind of upset that I would just like, I just can't do this anymore. It's like, well, why? Like, you know, they couldn't really understand. And my prayer is that someday that they do understand, because I know what it's like to kind of be abandoned by people, and this time, instead of abandoning or being abandoned, I was the one abandoning somebody. So I can only imagine how that felt for them. You know, I've been there myself. But even though I hung out with these new friends, the problem was I still hadn't found a true substitution, and especially when you're dealing with, you know, stuff like this, given, you know, issues and what have you, you have to find a substitution if you give something up. You can't just leave that hole there. You can't leave it void, because you'll just fall back in the same hole. 9 chances out of 10, you know. But I started suffering again with depression, and it was really hard. Like, I remember around this time, you know, I'd sit on the couch and I'd just be like crying, just for no reason, right? And it was actually kind of scary. And I remembered then my mother actually came over to me and she was like, "Whatever you're dealing with, it'll be okay." And to be honest, I don't think I ever really told her what I was dealing with, but again, she's soon gonna find out. Another pivotal point, like this is like where things start to get really interesting, in case anybody's like, you know, not really engaged or whatever. I was in English class. I was sitting in the back of the room, just waiting for the recess bell to ring so I could go out for a smoke. And this guy, he was a Christian, he was sitting in front of me, and this girl, who her grandmother had just recently passed away, was sitting to the left of me. And she was saying, like, "Oh, why would God give my grandmother cancer? Why would he do this? Why would he do that?" She was blaming him, and she was very upset. And this guy, he basically said, "You know what, like, God's a healer. He doesn't give diseases. He doesn't do anything. Like, he heals, you know?" Like, I was kind of intrigued by that. I was like, it was kind of interesting. Then they got on the topic of free will. Now, some of you guys in this congregation now know my story about how free will is like really important to me. In fact, I have it tattooed on my left wrist, free will. That's the thing that intrigued me, because he started talking about it, And something clicked inside. He was saying, you know, God loves everybody so much that He gives us the choice to follow Him. You know, He made everything, and He could have easily said, okay, everybody's going to follow me and love me, but no, He loved us so much that He gave us that choice. He gave us the free will. And something about that, it clicked inside, and I was like, well, that's kind of interesting. So this guy was actually a mutual friend of the girl from my homeroom as well, and God's got a plan. Like, it's amazing how everything just, like, ended up the way that it did, because being a mutual friend, we all made plans one night, and I remember calling him at work, and I was like, so where are we meeting? And he's like, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot that I told my friend I was going to youth group. Now, I'd heard about youth group, didn't know much about it, and I was, like, asking all these naive questions, because I was interested. I was like, so, do you have to sign up? Do you have to pay? Like, what's it all about? Who goes? That kind of thing. And he was like, no, anybody can go. Just drop by. So me and my friends ended up going there that night. And they kind of thought, they made a joke out of it, saying, oh, you're taking me to a cult. But I went there with, like, a super open mind, because I was, like, searching for that one thing that, you know, and obviously I was willing to try pretty much anything, because I didn't want to go back to the lifestyle that I had just previously come from. So I went to youth, and I freaking loved it. I was like, I am meant to be here. Like, I just felt like at home, you know? Like, I felt accepted, I felt loved, and I can't even remember what they preached on that night, but I just know that the Spirit was there, and I know that, you know, it was just, like, amazing. You know, and, so I kept going every week, and eventually I quit smoking and drinking for a while. Level 3 came. This was leading up to level 3, like the summer. And I cleaned up my act. I kept going to youth. You know, the reconnection with these friends, like the girl from level 1, was great. They helped keep me on track big time, and I'm forever thankful for that, because peer influence is really huge in junior high and in high school, and it's just like, it can make or break a person, essentially, depending on who you hang out with, you know? And so I was really glad that they re-entered my life. And by that, I mean no disrespect to the ones that I left, you know? They just lived a different lifestyle than me, and to each his own, it's just, it wasn't me. So, skipping along to the end, I graduated, got accepted into MUN, barely, because my grades from level 2 and level 3 were absolutely horrible. And when I finally did make it to Grenville, I started there in September 2010, and it was a huge transition for me. I went from like not studying to being forced to, because you can't really not study at university, and it was definitely a big thing. And I remember I would come home after school, and I would just literally flake out on my bed and just pass out from being so tired. So that happened on Thursday nights, which was when I went to youth group too. And I'd skip 1 week, and I'd skip another, and eventually I just stopped going. Even though I felt convicted, I knew that I should have gone, you know. I was just like, you know what, God? School is more important. Like I believed at this point, and I was like, you know, I need to study. You understand that, right? And then somebody later on explained to me, you honor God, He'll honor you. So that was a bad error on my part, but and it was even worse because New Year's coming around. I get through my first semester of university, and I slipped up. I went to a party with the intentions of just having a couple drinks. I was still underage at this point, but my parents were like, "Okay, you know what? You're 18. Do whatever. You know, I trust your judgment," because they knew I'd been going to church and stuff. Whatever. And so eventually, oh no, sorry, I'm backtracking now. I came home plastered that night. I overdid it, big time, and I paid for it the next day. I swear, God worked through a hangover because it taught me my lesson, or so I thought. But for weeks after, I would actually drink while studying. And for anybody who's entering into university or studying anything, that's a really bad idea. I will say that. Don't drink and study because I guarantee it won't go well. But skip along to March now. This is another pivotal point. Sometimes I view my life as an octagon. It's going pretty good, and then all of a sudden something happens. But in March, I was at work. I checked in a girl from a youth group, and she was like, "Oh, what are you doing Thursday night?" And I said, "Oh, nothing." And she said, "Oh, you want to come to youth?" So I was like, "Sure, why not? What do I got to lose?" So I went to youth, and And lo and behold, I felt the same thing that I felt the first time that I went there. I felt like I should be there, and from there I started going to Sunday morning services as well. And that was the first time that I'd ever really gone to a Sunday morning service, like, at all in my life. But, you know, it was great. I really enjoyed it. But the best is yet to come, because 2 months later, things got even better for me, because I remember going to youth, and the pastor had been on vacation or something like that, and he had asked one of the leadership team members to give his testimony. And Steve, he basically talked about how when he was in university, he struggled with, the whole peer influence and all that kind of stuff, and it really spoke to me, because I could connect on like so many different levels. And he said that he was on the phone with his father one night talking about faith over feeling. His father basically said that to him, you got to have faith in Christ over what you're feeling. And that really spoke to me that night. Like, I was like, whoa, because up until that point, I lived based on what I was feeling. I was feeling down, therefore I was sad. I felt like I didn't really have anything to put my faith in. But then I started to piece the puzzle together. I was like, you can put your faith in Jesus. And it was great. Now, I was still shy at this point. The introvertedness, if that's even a word, came on to this side, to this era. And I went home that night at my kitchen table, and I gave my life to the Lord. I was like, you know what? I'm yours from here on out. Have me, use me, fix me, do whatever you want. I'm done with this. I just want change. I'm sick of the way things are going. And I don't have this in my notes, but it came to me. Afterwards, after I'd finished my prayer, I started praying at 11:50 at night, and I ended about 10 minutes after. And so to this day, I don't really know whether it was the 20th or the 21st. That's my rebirthday. So, just celebrate in between, whatever. But after I was done praying, I just I was in the direction of where my hallway was. And I just looked over, and everything went completely white. And I just seen Jesus appear there, and he had his hands out like this, and I was like, whoa. That was my first vision. I was saved for 5 minutes, and I was like, whoa, that's cool. And I just had this sense of peace that I knew everything was going to be okay. And since then, that's been 2 years ago now. This was in 2011. So this previous May, it's been 2 years for me. He's healed me from a slew of things, including depression, self-esteem issues, rage, substance abuse, anxiety, bitterness, sense of rejection, and so much more. And what's even better than that is that even today, he's helping me overcome so many of the struggles that I face. A lot of people think, oh yeah, Christians are perfect, whatever. But you know what? Becoming a Christian doesn't mean you're perfect. It just means that you're given a new perspective on the same issues that you had before. You're still going to face stuff. You're still going to have temptations and struggles and stuff like that. But essentially, you're a new creation. And you're given that new perspective, a new outlook, that fresh vibe, And, 2 Corinthians 5:17 says, therefore, if anyone is in Christ, the new creation has come. The old is gone and the new is here. That's exactly what happened to me, and that's exactly what happened to anybody else who's been saved. You become a new creation, and again, you still have your struggles, but it's the perspective that comes along with that helps you deal with everything that life faces you. For me, temptation is still a big thing. I don't get tempted by marijuana. Every now and then I'll get a craving for a smoke, I'll say that, but alcohol is what gets me now. When I'm near it, I'm like, oh, it's so easy. And actually, the other day, literally, I can't remember if it was last night. No, it wasn't last night, it was the night before. One of my roommates asked me, oh, do you want a drink? Just casually. And for the first time, and I mean the first time, I didn't even have to think about my words, nothing. I was just like, no, thank you, I don't drink. And for me to say that, it was a huge thing, because before, I'd be like, him and Han, I'd be like, well, one drink won't hurt, will it? But as you can see with with my past at least, it was never one drink. I went with the intentions of having one or two, staggers home that night, and that's why to this day I abstain from that. And to be able to just say that to her, no thanks, I don't drink. It was freedom in those words alone. And You know, at first I couldn't even be near it. I would avoid any sort of scene like that, but now I can at least be near it. So that's, you know, good. You know. But, you know, Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 really stays near and dear to me every day, and it reminds me that my life is in His hands now, and that no matter what life throws at me, no matter what temptations comes towards me, I can, like, handle it. Because God is, like, right here. Somewhere, you know, like, there's like a saying, devil's on one shoulder and ain't, something like that, but anyway, I was like, trying to figure it out. But, yeah, it basically says, trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He shall direct your path. And without anybody answering, it's really within, you know, who's your trust in? You know, what do you trust in? What gets you through the day? The world has so much to offer, and just so many things that give us this temporary sense of belonging, sense of peace, sense of happiness, sense of love. But none of that matters because Jesus is the only thing that matters. And I can testify this here to you today. None of the other stuff is going to last. None of the material things, nothing. It doesn't matter. Isaiah 40 verse 8 says, the grass withers and the flowers fade, but the word of God stands forever. God stands forever. Where does your trust lie? You know, like, my trust used to be placed in drugs and alcohol. I trusted that it would get me through the day, that it would push my problems aside. But in the long run, it created more. But now I found something, or better yet, someone better. And His name is Jesus. And if He's not a part of your life right now, you know, I encourage you with every ounce of my being, just give Him a chance, because He won't fail you. Everything else will, but He won't.